Have you ever thought about which philosophy you most align with? If you had to name your beliefs about reality, truth, what life should focus on, and your overall goal or purpose, would they match a defined philosophy like nihilism, existentialism, absurdism? Or do you pull pieces from multiple philosophies from Western to Eastern? What are your beliefs about personal agency? How do you think the philosophy you align with helps or harms your mental health and overall well being? While you take time to think about it, let me introduce myself. Hi, my name is Elijah, but you can call me Lay. Welcome back to A Little Atypical, a space for the deep feelers and unconventional thinkers navigating wellness, personal development, and lifestyle with a little more nuance. I'm here to bring fresh energy to the beauty, wellness, and personal development space by having the curiosity to dig beneath the surface. I like to talk about typical topics from a not so typical perspective, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. The question of the episode may be a bit loaded, so I clearly don't expect you to be able to answer that in your head. But if you want to rewind or re-listen to this episode so you can record the question as a journal prompt, that is 100% welcome. So to give a little background for this question, last month in April, there was no real theme of the month because originally my plan was to have a theme around financial insecurity and how it influences the different areas of life, but I just couldn't execute the way I wanted to in that point of time. It would have been a cool thing to talk about given April is actually Financial Literacy Month, and given one of my roles heavily centered around making financial literacy more available, because while it is true we are living in a time where information is readily available, we are also living in a time where there is so much available that we need to learn first how to distinguish between facts and personal truths, and not to mention there is such thing as research gaps. So basically, April ended up being a month of so much reflection because it is the start of the astrological new year, and for people who started their quarter one more aligned with the traditional calendars like in January, it was essentially a month of starting new again for their quarter two. I figured it would just be inspired by what I'm focusing on in 2026, so community, career, and health, to just give random reflections and essentially redefine things for myself to keep my personal momentum going. And like I always say, if that then in return helps people reflect on their own personal momentum, that is essentially a win-win. I ended the month with health being the topic, and of all topics, that was my most delicate. It's like I want to be someone who can talk about things and give my opinion, but I'm still learning how to balance saying what exactly I mean versus wanting to be considerate at the same time. It was very challenging for me because there were moments I don't want to over explain, but I also don't want the message of the episode to be misconstrued. The point of the episode was to stop having urgency around the health journey and allow yourself to build up to things. I do mention why I do not like certain things said, but truthfully, I didn't have enough time to say everything on that subject without the episode turning into 3 hours. I said I don't like the word strong, and I wouldn't want to identify with it because of the loaded history behind that label, but that doesn't mean I don't want to strength train to increase my fitness level, and I do know that strength training is important for overall longevity. I didn't have time to explain that I also think when people use phrases like summer is in X amount of months, or say they need to downsize for a specific event like a vacation or a wedding, it might motivate them temporarily to jumpstart, but it doesn't encourage consistency the way allowing yourself to make progress no matter how long it takes does. And low-key, it encourages you to do things for something external rather than for yourself. And I would just define that way as short-term thinking. So if you are new here, or if you simply haven't caught up to listen to April's episodes to know how we got to this topic, I highly encourage you to get to those first before listening to this episode. Outside of the content I've been creating, the content I've been consuming, and the activities I've been participating in truly aligns with this topic of the month, which will be mental health. So, starting with activity, I started therapy at the end of March. And the thing is, it is very brief because they only allow 5 to 7 sessions under the way I can receive it, which is fine because I felt like I wasn't truly resonating with this therapist. But regardless, I do tend to get inspired by experiences I have and the conversations. And in one of them, the conversation, it was heavily focused around the topic of self-agency. Then with the books I've been reading for April, well, I am reading/read. So I read Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert, The Mad Wife by Megan Church, Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed, Parable of the Talents by Octavia E. Butler. I had the intention to try to finish this before today, Friday, which is May 1st, but unfortunately I didn't get to finish that, so it's just going to continue into my May reads. And I also read Real Happiness by Sharon Salzberg, Notes of an Execution by Danya Kakowska, and The Stranger by Albert Camus. With the exception of Heated Rivalry, which has been more of my curiosity read since I don't have HBO, but I still get content around the show, so I figured I would read the book to see the hype. And this is just an unrelated note, but I feel like I enjoyed the relationship towards the end of the book, but at least in the first 70%, it just felt too repetitive. And I don't know, I felt like the characters and the storyline were a bit underdeveloped. Like all there was their careers and each other. But for all romance books in general, I prefer like when they show like bonds outside of the romantic aspect, like more friendships, people having hobbies. And for me, the beginning of the book just didn't show that often. So it just felt very imbalanced to me. And I also felt like the way she described their dynamic fell short, but I still had fun. Anyways, getting back to the point, because I can go on and on about books and book reviews. In general, I feel like the content I've been consuming had been heavily about womanhood, motherhood, grounding practices for uncertain times, or just life transitions in general, grief, perception versus reality and facing hard truths, potential versus purpose, morality, intentional community building, etc. And like I said, I'm not going to give full reviews on the books, at least not in this month's episode, but I just wanted to share the themes I've been personally experiencing, and I feel like these themes combined connects to the idea of self-agency, because the more I sit with them, the more I realize they all point back to the same core questions, which is like, what do I believe? What do I want? What am I willing to do about it? So starting off with womanhood and motherhood, both make me think about creation, caring, and responsibility, because they make me ask where I've been like carrying expectations that come from a time where the way of life was functioning differently, and where I've been self-sacrificing for the ease and comfort of others, and basically that. And grounding practices for uncertain times reminded me that agency isn't always like this like loud, dramatic thing. Sometimes it's simple choices to regulate first, to breathe, to, do the little things, eat, to move my body, to reflect, and to not make permanent conclusions from temporary states, temporary emotions. Then with grief and life transitions, they are also teachers of agency because they force you to accept that you can't control everything, who leaves, what changes, or what version of your life you thought you were going to get. But you can choose how to meet the moment. You can choose how honest you're willing to be about what you're feeling about it. And I feel like people make healing, like the healing journey, healing process, this absolute thing. But in my experience, I can still feel sad about the way something turned out. For example, with a person I haven't seen since like 2023, and still be happy about the way I am present, you know, lip syncing life goes on, because despite how heavy things feel and confusing just life feels sometimes, the point is to keep trying regardless of the outcome. And in the words of Ray, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I know I'm not giving up. So you can choose whether you abandon yourself or whether you stay with yourself through the mess of life. Because despite all the ups and downs, the emotional turmoil, the uncertainty about whether you made the right choices or not, there will come a moment in your life where staying with yourself is the most courageous thing you can do, even when it doesn't always feel inherently positive. And as for the other themes, such as perception versus reality and facing like hard truths, ties directly into agency, because you can't advocate for yourself if you don't know what's real. And I don't mean, well, maybe I do mean, but I feel like so many realities can coexist. And if you keep downplaying what you need, ignoring your instincts, or just changing your story to make other people feel more comfortable, you end up believing things that are not true for you. And I believe agency starts with being clear about what is real and what that means. And that means being honest with yourself, you know? And the thing about truth is things can be true for a time, and at some point that truth can change. Things can work for a time and eventually not be relevant for the next. Do with that statement what you will. Moving on to potential versus purpose, it ties directly into agency because potential is, not necessarily a personality trait. It's something you choose to cultivate, to adapt, and use your habits and decisions to kind of format it. And when fear or complacency leads, potential becomes a place to hide, and people stay frozen in that point of time. And agency is what leads to purposeful actions. So making a clear next choice, building supportive structures for yourself, and committing to long-term work even when it's hard. Because it's about doing the work and not being perfect. It's about consistency and not about necessarily the outcome. And you have to believe that regardless of the outcome, that making the effort was the point. Trying was the point. And last but not least, morality and intentional community. And yes, I know it's kind of ironic to put these together, but these relate to agency because one thing that I noticed about like these two themes is not just about doing whatever you want. And I know that sounds a little counterintuitive, but it's about like making choices with integrity. It's about noticing how your choices affect other people and deciding who you want to be in your relationships, your work, your community. And essentially it's basically saying I'm responsible for myself and I am still connected to others. So when I say all these themes connect to self-agency, I mean I've been learning that self-agency is like a bridge between your inner world and outer life. It's the practice of translating what you know and, what you value into how you move, how you present yourself, what you tolerate. And I feel like I'm not just talking about like what you tolerate from other people, but what you tolerate for yourself and the things you do for yourself. Like, are you a person that constantly self coddles? Or do you like to challenge yourself sometimes? And how do you balance like wanting to challenge yourself without being too harsh, but knowing like what you want to be, who you want to be, and not letting yourself let that go? And also, obviously, like what you create and what you choose is next, and how you view all those things. All this long thing to say is this month's theme is mental health, but I want to explore it through the lens of self agency. Mental health is such a wide topic, and you can talk about it through so many different lenses, such as through culture or spirituality or religion, community, and so on. But for me, agency is a good starting point because it shapes how we respond to what we feel, what we believe, and what we do next. Not to sound so repetitive. So I just made a short list on why agency can improve your mental health. So the first thing is it reduces helplessness because it puts things into perspective for you. And this is why I was asking you about your philosophy beliefs and how that aligns and how it can be helping you see things and giving you an epiphany and encourages you to do certain things in life, or it could be undermining you. Another thing I found is that it lowers the anxiety loop. Clear next steps can reduce rumination, and that is something I spoke about last episode. And it can bring your mind back to the present. It also strengthens self-trust, and you guys know I'm very big on learning how to trust yourself and trust your own instincts, and I just like giving the tools, giving out perspective, but ultimately I believe people should be formulating their own opinions and not be so easily influenced. And following through on your own values builds confidence and self-assuredness, the thing that people are constantly looking for within themselves. And it also supports building boundaries, and it increases resilience. So when hard things happen, sad things happen, uncertainty happens, and at a lot of times it feels like you're getting blocked from the things you want, you can still find some ground because agency helps you ask, like, even if this is happening, what can I do to still make the most of what I'm experiencing, to make the most of what I have now while in process, while in transition. Overall, agency is so important when you're in the middle of things, because I feel like the middle of being in something, whether you're on a health journey or something like you're just in the process of identity shifting, that this helps you stay grounded within the process, because the beginning phase is always so fun. It's exciting. It's the planning phase, like it's just energizing. And then, of course, the end phase is the outcome of getting exactly what you want. But staying in it, staying in the middle, working towards like you're not exactly who you were, but you're still not exactly where you want to be. That is why agency is the most important thing, because learning that in those times can ground you. So for this month's setup for the episodes, obviously this one is about introducing the topic and giving some journal ideas. Next episode is more like an inspo list. And for the last episode of the month, I'm considering it to be about visibility as a source of agency, but don't quote me on that one because I'm still trying to flesh out the final idea of the last episode. But overall, I want you to walk away with a repeatable system, something you can use for all these episodes, and honestly, any month you need to make you feel like your life is back in your hands. So think of the next ideas as templates. And I feel like each episode of this month can help you fill out a different page. So I'm so sorry if my voice sounds off. Whenever I have to record episodes, this tends to happen. But basically, you're gonna need at least 3 journal pages. I think a physical book would be best, but you can also just create it on your phone or do it digitally, whatever. So page 1 will be about the fog, quote unquote, and that's all about like decisions and discovery. Page 2 will be about like the 5% plan, so implementing, and page 3 will be about like making receipts, so accountability. And I'm gonna walk you through each one of these exercises, but the design is meant to travel with you, and you can essentially set it up in any way that makes sense for your brain. But this is just what makes sense, makes it fun. The fog map. You'll need 1 page. This is where you catch the invisible thoughts that are running you, just to name them, because you can't have agency over what you refuse to look at. So this episode sets up this page because, it's about mental health through the lens of self-agency. So starting with building awareness, before you like implement anything, you need to know, like I said, what you're responding to. So I would divide up the page into 4 sections, maybe like make it into a window, essentially. And in one box, put fog, which is the story, what's buzzing in the background of what's going on in your life, like what is making you not see things clearly, essentially. Then have a section for the facts, what you know for sure is real right now. Feelings, which is like the signals, like what emotions keep showing up. Where do you feel it in your body, if that's like a thing? If you struggle with like naming sensations, like physically, like where you feel it, you can use like other senses. So maybe like song lyrics that has been like buzzing in your head, like something very reflective of what you're feeling, if it's too hard to name how you feel it in your body. And the freedom section is like, what is one choice you can make that honors reality and your needs? So I'm gonna make a little example for this. Episode 85 was when we talked about like career and like job searching, so I'm just gonna use that as an example. So the fog is, for that example, is that you're thinking you did everything you were supposed to. You went to college, you followed the traditional path, you made the portfolio, digital portfolio, you did the certifications, you reach out to people, and it still feels like you're not getting what you've been trying for. And you don't know why it feels like nothing is working. And then for facts, you can put what exactly you have been doing, how much time you've been dedicating to putting yourself out there. You can put about what you know is true about your capabilities and remind yourself like what talents, what skills you have. Then with feelings, like I said, what keeps like showing up, like is it doubt, is it sadness, is it frustration, is it worry, like what feeling shows up the most in that context, and what sensations like signals to that emotion. And if you can't say a physical symptom, you can say like songs that has been resonating, something. And then you can list out some things you can do in that moment, some choices you can make that day throughout the week that will honor that reality. Like even if you are struggling to get a job, like what else can you do? Can you contribute more to your personal work to go beyond that and try the unconventional route of doing things? Can you talk to more people? Can you go to more events? And also, there are other ideas, like maybe if you want to like make it fun or do something a little more unconventional, you can write the fog part like it's like a dramatic character and giving a monologue, and literally like give it a name or something. And to have some prompts to pull from. So even though I already mentioned this, so name the fog. What is the worry or story that keeps buzzing in the background lately? Find the controllables, like in this situation. What is within your control? What is influenceable? And what is not? And if you can't think of that in the same sense of like just listing it in your head, you can also do a mind map, or you can do like the Venn diagrams of the three and, just do things like that. Next, you can also ask yourself, when you can feel your mind racing, what helps you slow down your thinking? What do you need more of this week? What matters most to you in this season? And then for like closing sentences, you can do like 2 to 4 sentences on like the choices I want to make this week are, the environment I want to create around me is, and just like fill in the blanks. Next exercise 2, the 5% plan. So for this page, it will turn your awareness into action. Of course, without the urgency or perfectionism or, just the hyper rebrand, because we're going to basically take things little by little, like I encourage. So the next episode will set it up because of the type of ideas I had for the episode, because it's basically going to act as like a menu for ideas. And to set up this page, basically write 3 lines at the top and say like, my value this week is blank. My 5% move is blank. My environment upgrade is blank. And then below it, you can create like 2 columns. And of course, this is going to sound a little basic, but put like the inputs that drain you versus inputs that stabilizes you. And then underneath that, write a tiny like little plan for different things. So if I feel the fog, then I will fill in the blank. Just choose something that is meant to regulate you. Next, after I regulate, I will choose one like actionable step that you can do at any point after your regulation. And to make it easier, I will. And this is basically about like environment. So, okay, going back to our career example, because honestly I don't feel like making another example. So if you feel the fog, like the heaviness of feeling like, oh, I'm blocked by life, one thing you can do to regulate yourself is step away from the computer, take a walk, like go outside, take a walk, or just be out for like 5 to 10 minutes, or you can like wash your face or do any easy self-care activity, right? And then after you regulate, you will, let's say, instead of applying directly, if researching is too much, like researching rules, maybe the next thing is instead like talk to people or reach out to people. Because maybe the problem is that you're reaching out, trying so much, and it feels like you're not getting any closer. And if that's the case, then maybe connecting with other people that maybe you met in the past or maybe old classmates, and just have conversations with them. Reach out. And to make it easier, you can do a digital setup for that. You can create a list of people. You can physically write it out in your planner and have that next to your computer. And to make it more fun, you can make it feel like you're directing a scene, because that's how the setup is supposed to feel. Some prompts to pull from: what skills, ideas, or support systems would expand your capacity right now? Where do you need to speak up, ask for help, or ask for clarity? And of course, like, end the page with some sentences. So the next small action I will take in the next, you can either say 24 hours, or you can, if you want to, you can expand like ideas for the week if that works better for you. And then the second sentence will be the support I will ask for is whatever you think you need clarity on, advice on, where you're not quite understanding what to do. And the third and final exercise I want to share is more so about visibility and relating to the third episode. So this is not about a beat yourself up page, because I do think some people mistake like accountability for self punishment, but it's basically where you collect proof like you are definitely showing up for yourself in real time. And like I said, I do have an idea about visibility and wanting to talk about it in the case of agency, because when you're visible to yourself first, it is easy to create visibilities around the external. And I don't mean that in a performative way. I mean just in general of putting yourself out there. So to set this page up, create 3 running lists you'd like to add to throughout the month. So one could be receipts, so moments you chose, agency, big or small, data, so patterns you notice, like what helps, what doesn't, and basically repair, so how you came back when you started to drift. And I think the last one is very important, because sometimes we get so mad at ourselves about falling off of something, that we stay stuck in that shame and that guilt instead of thinking about the comeback and giving ourselves credit for that. And I do think it's so important to be able to bounce back fast, regardless of like the hard things. And then you can also add like a weekly check-in for these prompts. So what did I do that proved I'm not helpless? What loops did I interrupt, even if it was once? What boundaries did I honor or consider? What is my gentle reset plan for next week? And to make it more fun, if you're like an unconventional person, you can write it like you're collecting evidence for a case, like Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C, and I think that could be fun. So to do a mini close off for this section, you can also add like the choice I'm proud of this week is, the environment I'm learning to create is, and the support I will ask for next is. And I think that's it. So for all it's worth, I know there is already so much content about resetting, getting unstuck, or quote unquote locking in after a hard season. But what I'm making here isn't about fixing you, it's about refocusing. Because you are not a problem that needs a solution. You are a person, a human who is having a human experience. Sometimes we go looking for guidance because we're exhausted, discouraged, or just straight up disappointed, maybe in ourselves, maybe in just the way things are playing out, and we start treating our lives like a project that is behind schedule. That is why we always say like, oh my god, I'm falling behind. Oh my god, I feel so late. Oh my god, like I just don't know what I'm doing anymore. And if you're listening from that place where you're kind of panicking, I just want you to breathe for a second and remind yourself you don't have to punish yourself into progress. And learning to see progress as a beautiful thing, as a form of expression, will energize you. And this episode is essentially inviting you to come back to yourself with honesty and compassion, because agency is about making choices. And it doesn't have to be multiple choices. It could be one choice at a time. And it's about noticing where you are, naming what you need, and taking the next step that actually feels like it fits into your life. And if all you can do right now is make the smallest move, it still counts, because if you've been in survival mode, choosing to try again is already evidence of strength. You are allowed to start where you are. You are allowed to go slowly or at any pace you feel that is right for you at the moment. And you are allowed to have days where the only win is that you didn't abandon yourself. So that is all for today's episode. I'm so sorry about my voice, because sometimes when I record for a bit, it does take a huge strain. And I'm just going to wrap up with a card from the self-care oracle deck, because like I said, today is May 1st, and because the Scorpio full moon is happening today, and I just feel like even though this is going to be played like next week, I think it's still so important that we have an idea of an act of self-care that we can collectively do to start the month strong. And remember, if card pulls aren't your thing and this is where you usually click off, thank you for listening this far, and be sure to come back next week. Follow the podcast so you can stay up to date with new episodes, catch up with old episodes, and rate the podcast 5 stars so more like-minded people can add it to the rotation of content. And for this episode, 2 cards came out. We got was 45, Sing, and 33, Make a Vision Board. So, mantra, my voice uplifts all who hears it. You have a unique voice and carry deep wisdom that the world needs to hear. You can share your words in any way you like, even singing them. Many of us have fear when it comes to sharing our voices, but expressing ourselves through song can be unexpectedly freeing. Try writing a song for fun and as a way to convey what you are feeling. Sing it to yourself and notice how it makes you feel in the moment. Record it and play it back for yourself. What emotions come up? Does it empower you or make you feel shy? Sing your favorite song in public at an open mic, singing circle, or karaoke bar to break through fear and experience new levels of self-expression. Sing at home or in your car to delight yourself and elevate the vibe. Sing to your heart's content. Journal prompt. What are your favorite song lyrics right now, and how does hearing them make you feel? Now for card 33. Mantra. My dreams have come true. Visualization is a key part of manifestation, and making a vision board is a potent way to call in what you've been seeking. Get crafty with paper and scissors to construct a vision board with images that represent the things, people, and experiences you want in your life. Alternatively, use motivational images on your computer or phone background for a portable digital vision board. Pair images with words to add specifics and energy to your manifestation process. For example, if there is a certain type of job opportunity, romantic partner, or life experience you want to call in, you can write out a detailed list explaining how you'd like that person or event to manifest and how it will make you feel. These techniques work because we are made to hone in on what's important. In turn, we start to prioritize taking the necessary steps to bring our desires to life. As you get clarity on what you want, you're more likely to recognize it and work toward it as it becomes more real and feels more tangible. See it, feel it, be it. Journal prompt. What are the top 3 things you want to manifest in your life? And that's all for today. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of A Little Atypical. If you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe and share this with someone who might need to hear this message. Remember, view the description box where you can find important links such as the one to my website, where there's so much more bonus content. And if not that, check out my Substack, because that's where I am sharing and revising some of my content from my website. So stay tuned, and until next time, have a good day, evening, or night, and stay authentically atypical. Okay, bye!